Hello everybody and welcome to the session number 5 in the Business Research Methods course, which is going to be delivered by me, Associate Professor Dr. مراد محمد Al-Nashmi. This session is going to be about theoretical framework and hypothesis development, and it is also dependent on the previous session. If you remember, we talked about the literature review. So and when we talk about the literature review, we talked about the concepts, the theory, the relationship between variables, which is also a basement for this session about the theoretical framework. The intended learning outcomes for this session is going to be after this chapter, after this session, the students should be able to define theory, and variable, differentiate between theoretical and conceptual framework. As you know, the theoretical framework is different from conceptual framework, as the conceptual framework is your own, as a researcher or student, your own framework, depending on the model that you are going to develop. And also, the students should be able to identify different types of research variables, which is the components, or which is the main components of reflecting the research problem. And also, after finishing this session, the students should be able to formulate testable hypotheses. Accordingly, the session content is going to be theory, concept, and theory and the differences, the theoretical framework development, the conceptual framework, and the differences between both research variable and also hypothesis development. We have major areas for business research. When we do business research, we are doing the research on the major areas of business, which is also related to the major functions of the organization. When we talk about organizations, the functions of the organization, that means we are talking about 4 main functions and other supporting functions. The main functions are marketing, human resource management, financial management, and operation, or production and operation management. There are also some other functions like strategic management, like MIS, management information system, like change and development, like R&D, like a lot of other functions. So when we do research in business, that means we are going to focus on these major areas. The first area is related to the organization, which is general business conditions and corporate research. Research that is going to focus on the business conditions and also the corporate development of any company. The second one is research can focus on financial and accounting, which is also there in research. So the second area is going to be the financial and accounting research, which is going to be about finance. The third area is about management, organizational behavior, something related to the behavior of the employees inside the organization, and the management and leadership and whatever is related to the managing the workforce in the company. The third is going to be about the sales and marketing, which is also one of the most important functions for any organization. The fifth is going to be management information system research, which is about the information system. We have also different areas related to these 5 main areas. I have just mentioned some of them now. Mostly the business researcher are going to find issues and gaps and research problems among these main areas or major areas. Last time we talked about the theory, the concept, and the variables, and now we talk about it again because it is related to the development of theoretical and conceptual frameworks. So we said the theory is going to be exploratory concepts. This is according to Collins and Hussey. and it is about the variables and the relationships between or among the variables, according to Cooper and Skandler. So, in brief, theory is a depict or an explanation of the relationship between the variables. So it determines and defines the focus and goal of the research problem. The second one is a concept. What is the concept? It's the variable, which is going to be the operationalized variable. According to Cooper and Skandler, the concept is an accepted collection of meanings associated to the events, objects, conditions, and a situation. So it is, as I said, it is the variable before before what we call the operationalization. The variable is another term related to the concept, equivalent to the concept, and it is a simple concept that can assume any one of a set of values, anything that can take on differing or varying values. So the concept is also a variable, but there it is what we call a construct, and here is a variable, and it must be operationalized. So it must be undergo the operationalization so we can measure it. So the variable is more specific and is measurable than the concept. The theoretical framework, just as the foundation supports a house, a theoretical framework provides a rationale for prediction about the relationship among variables and research. So the theoretical framework can introduce a prediction about the relationship among the variables of the research. So the basic entire research is the theoretical framework. It helps in building, identifying logical sense of relationship among the several factors that are important to the problem. So it is the logical sense of relationship among the variables. The theoretical framework is also can help in developing a specific basis for investigation and investigating the research problem. It is also representing your beliefs on how certain phenomena, which is the variable or concept, are related to each other, which is now a conceptual conceptual framework, and an explanation on why you believe that these variables are associated to each other, which is a theory. So the theoretical framework is the main thing when we talk about conceptual framework and theory. It is the basement of both of them. The conceptual framework is or describes and explains the concept, variable to be used in the study, and also their relationship with each other. So what is the model? This model is simple or complicated. The symbol is containing the IV, which is going to affect or has a relationship with DV, which is dependent variable. A complicated one, we introduce some other variables in which we have mediator or a moderator. So it is what we call the conceptual framework that can describe and explain these concepts and variables and these types of relationship and how they are to be measured. In other words, we call it the model, the research model. This consists of concepts that are placed within a logical and sequential design. So how can we judge or how can we tell that the IV is in this position and may have an effect on the DV? This is very important to be understood, and the conceptual framework can do so, or can purpose for that. It aids the researcher to identify, construct his or her world view, and approach to the topic study. This is as Grant and Osanlo said. So what is the difference now, or what are the differences between theoretical framework and conceptual framework? The first thing is the theoretical framework is called from an existing theory or theories and literature review that has already been tested and validated by others and considered as acceptable theories in a scholarly literature. So whatever is reviewed in the literature review as the previous theories and previous models and previous work is going to be a theoretical framework. The conceptual framework is the researcher's understanding of how the research problem will be explored. So in the conceptual framework, it is going to be the researcher's model. The depiction or the depicts of the model of the researcher and how it relates to each other. In the theoretical framework, it is just reviewing the previous theories and previous studies. In the conceptual framework, the specific direction of the research will have to be taken by the researcher is going to be conceptual framework, and also the conceptual framework can also depict the understanding of the relationship between the different variables in the study. So we can say the conceptual framework is the model of the current research, which is done by the researcher, and the previous one, the theoretical framework, is talking about the previous theories and previous models done by others. So theoretical framework is derived from theory, while conceptual framework derived from concepts, the relationship between concepts. We need also, in order to construct good conceptual frameworks, we need to understand the meaning of the variables and the types of the variables. So the variable is a concept or a construct that varies or changes in values. So when we talk about organizational performance, which is the performance of the organization, it differs. The organization performance is a variable as it differs from company to company, and also as it differs for the same company from time to time. The main types of variables, we have 4 main types of variables. The first one is the dependent variable, which is the main issue of any research, which is the output. And the second one is the independent variable, which is the cause. So we can say the independent variable is the cause, the dependent variable is an issue or the effect. And the third one is going to be the moderating variables, which is a variable which change the relationship between the cause and effect. The fourth one is the mediating variables, which is a variable that can connect between the IV and the DV, the independent variable and dependent variable. So the dependent variable is of primary interest of the researcher. The goal of the research project is to understand, predict, explain the variability of this variable. So it is the variable of primary interest, which is we call it the issue, the main issue. The second is the IV influence the DV in either positive or negative way. The variance in the DV is accounted for by the IV. So it is that the variable which influence the dependent variable. An example for that is the job satisfaction can have an effect on job performance. So we can assume here that when the employees are highly satisfied, their performance is going to be high, and the opposite, and vice versa. So here the job performance is the dependent variable. and the job satisfaction is the independent variable. Moderating variable is one that has a strong contingent effect on independent variable relationship. The present modifies the original relationship between independent and dependent variable, and this is an example. So if the workforce diversity is going to affect organizational effectiveness, the workforce diversity is going to be the IV, and here is the DV. If there is a variable that can affect the relationship, that means make it high or low, or change the direction of it, is going to be what we call moderating variable, and this is can be represented by managerial expertise. This is the moderating variable. That means the expertise of management can affect the relationship between the workforce diversity and organizational effectiveness. So this is the IV, this is the DV, and this is the MV, which is the moderating variable. The fourth one is the mediating variable. It is a variable that is caused by the independent variable and itself causes the dependent variable. So it is caused by the independent and cause the dependent. So it is just like a linker or a connector. So help to conceptualize and explain the influence of the independent variable and dependent variable. And this is the example. So if the service quality is going to affect the customer switching, so this effect is going to pass through the customer satisfaction. When the service quality is high and the customer switching is needs customer satisfaction to connect between service quality and customer switching. So the mediating variable, or the mediator here, is caused by the IV and cause the DV. So it is a DV for the IV and it is an IV for the DV, independent for the dependent variable. The hypothesis can be developed by looking at the model or the conceptual framework, and it is going to be a statement logically formed as an opinion or basis of relationship between two or more variables. An opinion is made on the basis of theoretical network. So the hypothesis is defined also as a statement concerning the relationship among variables. The characteristic of good variable are as follows: state the relationship between two or more variables. So whether it is between IV and DV, or IVs and DV, or IV moderator and DV, or the mediator and DV. So it is a reflection of the research conceptual framework. It is stated affirmatively, not as a question, can be tested with empirical evidence, and also stated how multiple variables are related. Theory or underlying logic of the relationship makes sense, so it is also dependent on the literature review. How we develop the hypothesis: once identifying the important variables, then establish the relationship among them through logically reasoning in a theoretical framework. Test formulating such testable statements is called hypothesis development. So we test we develop the hypothesis dependent on the theoretical framework, and then we get reliable information about the existing relationship. We get the information from previous studies, of course, on the literature review, give some test results, an idea or ideas to solve the problem. We have different types of research. of research hypothesis. The first type of hypothesis is what we call the null hypothesis, which is the negative hypothesis. So we assume or propose the absence of the relationship or difference in the result. Any relationship or difference is due to chance or sampling error. So the example is like this. There is no significant relationship between wages and job performance. So we assume here that there is no relationship. So this is what we call null. It is zero, which is negative. The second type is what we call alternative hypothesis. Here we develop affirmative type of hypothesis. So expresses the relationship between variables under study positively, points a direction, and requires assumption that is specified and objective. The example is there is a significant positive relationship between wages and job satisfaction. And here the benefits of the hypothesis is that it can be measured quantitatively. So we have different indicators here. The first indicator is whether there is a relationship or not. The existence of the relationship. The second is the size of the relationship. Statistically, we can have from any statistical program, we can have some results as an output of that program, which is going to be numerical. So the size and the existence of the relationship is an indicator of the acceptance or rejection of this hypothesis. The second one is the direction of the relationship, whether it is positive or negative. Here we assumed that there is a significant positive relationship. That means when the wages increase, the job satisfaction increase. This is our proposal or proposition, or what we call the hypothesis. So we test this after we collect the data and analyze this data. The fourth indicator is the significance, which is to what extent the data is free from error. And in business research, you must be confident, 95% confidence. So the significant is must be 0.05 and less, and not more. 0.04, 0.03, 0.02, 0.01, 0.000. These are the indicators. These indicators can explain and can depict the relationship, and can show the researcher whether he can accept or reject the hypothesis. So dear students, throughout this session we learned the following: defining the theory, concepts and variables, and we understand the differences between concept and variable. We also differentiate between theoretical and conceptual framework. They're identifying different types of research variable, which is very important in building the conceptual framework, formulating testable hypothesis. The assignment is going to be attached in the LMS along with this session. Now we come to the end of this session, which was about the theoretical and conceptual framework and also the hypothesis development. I hope everybody has got all the information and knowledge needed for developing the theoretical and conceptual framework, and also how they develop the hypothesis for the research. So see you for the next session, and I hope everything is clear to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.